Prossimo incontro. La numero 5, Hao Quen contro la numero 6, Pugilato. Pronta? Pronta?
La vincitrice del terzo incontro è la numero 5, la Mai Wai.
Brace yourselves, because what we are about to tell you might sound like science fiction. A question that's been doing the rounds for the longest time. Do aliens exist? And a Cold War era incident might have just added another layer to that big question. According to a formerly classified document, originally made public in 2000 but recently resurfacing, a bizarre and deadly encounter allegedly unfolded somewhere in the Soviet Union around 1989 or 1990. The document, believed to be based on a 250-page KGB file obtained after the USSR's collapse, outlines a chain of events that reads more like a sci-fi movie script or a novel than a military report. It all started with 25 Soviet troops on a routine training mission near a military base near present-day Ukraine or Siberia. And that's when the soldiers reportedly spotted a quiet saucer-shaped craft hovering at low altitude. One of them fired a surface-to-surface missile directly striking the mysterious object and bringing it plummeting to the ground. But what followed was anything but ordinary. 5 short humanoid creatures reportedly exited the craft. You heard that right. According to the CIA document, they had oversized heads, large black eyes, moved with unsettling speed, and later merged into a single spherical-shaped glowing object. And then the unimaginable happened. The object unleashed a blinding burst of light, and within seconds, 23 soldiers were turned to stone, literally stone. 2 troops managed to survive only because they were standing in the shadow of a nearby structure. According to the memo, the KGB wasted no time. They allegedly collected the bodies and the alien wreckage and transported everything to a top-secret facility outside Moscow. As for the weapon that caused this, it was described as something far beyond what modern science could possibly understand, let alone replicate. Fast forward to the Trump administration. During his 2024 campaign, in fact, he dismissed the idea of aliens outright. But once elected, he signed an executive order mandating the release of all federal files related to extraterrestrial activity. Trump said Americans deserved to know the truth and deserved to know if a decades-long cover-up had actually taken place. The memo at the heart of all this, it's been circulating online for over a year now and igniting a heated debate. Was this an actual alien attack, or just a brilliant piece of Cold War propaganda designed to scare the West? We may never know. Regardless, the mystery of extraterrestrial life just got a lot stranger.
Is it cosmic revenge or a tall tale straight out of science fiction? A CIA file about aliens attacking Soviet forces has gone viral, raising eyebrows and dropping jaws.
It may sound fanciful and difficult to believe. You may think it's hogwash, while others believe it's possible. So the CIA just posted on its website a single-page summary, there it is, of a hostile encounter between the Russian army and a flying saucer that is said to have occurred sometime between 1989 and 1990. So that's when, according to portions of an extensive 250-page KGB file featuring witness testimony and photographs, detail how 25 Soviet troops were practicing training drills when a, quote, low-flying spaceship in the shape of a saucer, unquote, flew above their base in Siberia. Now, the report states that for unknown reasons, the sighting prompted the men to launch a surface-to-air missile, bringing the craft down.
Wow, this is crazy. So what in this report, what does it allege the soldiers, what do they do with the
I
aircraft?
don't think it's what they did with the aircraft. It's what the aircraft or its occupants did with them. So yeah, this is what happened. According to the file, quote, 5 short humanoids with large heads, large black eyes emerged from the wreckage before fusing together into a single object, a spherical shape that emitted a buzzing sound. The report goes on to say the sphere burst into an explosion of white light, leaving 23 of the men, quote, turned into stone poles, unquote, while the remaining 2 that apparently were shielded from the blast by being in the shade escaped unharmed. Now, the bodies of the victims and what was left of the UFO were recovered by the Red Army and taken to a research lab outside Moscow, where it was found that the molecular structure of the men was that of limestone.
What?
So the light that petrified them was a source of energy that officials say is not currently known to humanity.
Whoa. We literally said jaw-dropping at the top of the story. I'm sitting there going, what?
This is a CIA report. We're not
Right.
making it. This isn't a
Yeah.
tabloid, okay?
Okay. So this file that's now declassified by the
Right.
CIA. I mean, analysts that are looking at this. I mean, it does seem far-fetched, like this is some kind of sci-fi movie. I mean, what do they say about these details?
Right. So in the report, and according to the Independent that reported on the report, an unnamed CIA analyst is quoted as saying, quote, if the KGB file corresponds to reality, well, this is an extremely menacing case. The aliens possess weapons and technology that go beyond all of our assumptions. They can stand up for themselves if attacked. And an ex-CIA agent says if there was an incident, he suspects the actual report doesn't look much like what has come out decades later. You know, perhaps it's been embellished over time. Now,
declassified UFO documents, including reports about alleged Soviet clashes with aliens and other mysterious occurrences. So much to be able to talk about here. Maykay, thank you, first of all, for talking about this, because as we're looking at video here of happening back in 2004, explain why this is such a big thing. This isn't hogwash. I mean, this is coming from the CIA.
And what we're talking about today, just like I said, it is not tabloid. So these are declassified documents. And today's incident we're going to talk about, you're going to ask yourself, is it cosmic revenge or is it a tall tale straight out of a science fiction movie? We're going to let you decide this, but the fact that it is declassified, it is on record. This is a summary that has been released of a 250-page KGB report about incidents that have happened. This one we're talking about happened between 1989 and 1990 in Siberia.
And to let you know, we have that report, so we're going to be showing
we have the
you
report.
that
We're going to
here.
show it to you. I have it in front of me. So what happened was, allegedly, although this isn't a report, there are pictures, there are eyewitness reports. We have snippets that we're going to tell you about today. There were 25 Soviet troops. They were on a training mission doing drills when suddenly a saucer, a UFO that appeared to look like a flying saucer, appeared above them. So according to reports, they launched a surface-to-air missile to shoot it down.
I mean, this is serious. And the fact that this document that everybody's looking at here that we're showing is now declassified, just so people can understand the timeline, this was declassified how many years ago?
So
Back in
it was actually
1989?
declassified, believe it or not, in 2000.
In 2000.
So the incident reportedly happened between 1989 and 1990 in Siberia. It was declassified in 2000. So why now, just now, is the CIA posting it on their website?
That's what I want to know. I mean, let's talk about it.
Okay, so I'm going to have a guest talk about this in the next couple days, but times are changing. We all know that the world is in a bit of a chaos. We all know this, right? The tensions are high. People are on edge. There's talk about war. Of course, we have Ukraine and Russia and the war, a lot of unsettlement. When times are unsettled like this historically, we know UFOs and UAPs, the new UFOs, exist. This is a fact. Now, don't look at me and say, well, what do you mean? We don't know if there are aliens out there. We're not saying they're aliens, right? unidentified flying objects.
We know that's a fact.
We know that these are facts. Okay, they have
People get confused though, because I think when you hear UFOs, then you're thinking in some people automatically just say, I don't believe in that because they're thinking aliens.
Right,
But here you're saying just the unidentified flying objects are a fact that we have spotted those. And this document shows that.
And unidentified anomalous phenomena. That's the new name of it.
Okay.
We know those exist. There are records of them existing going back 80 years. 80 years. And then, of course, if you're a historian, there are records of strange things going on back thousands of years.
So let me just ask you this, Make. Why is it that this makes people uncomfortable? We talk about things like that. I mean, people obviously watch and they're intrigued.
It's fascinating.
But there's also the skepticism that comes with that.
Right. Well, let me go back because I don't want to forget this. Why are we hearing more about UFOs and UAPs now?
Okay.
Lately, that kind of touched on, we know we're kind of in a chaotic state in the world. Going back 40 years when Roswell and the first appearances, there have been a lot of appearances over the years, but when they happened, there had been reports of UFOs and UAPs over military bases and nuclear weapons where they had been monitored and turned on and off. UFO experts speculate that in times when there might be a fear of a nuclear war, and I'm not saying that's going to happen. Dear God, please don't let that happen. But there are fears of that right now. There's talk of it, that these UAPs and UFOs make themselves known more. Now, are they manned by adversaries? Are they manned by other terrestrials that live on the planet that we don't know about? These are things we're going to be talking about later. But this is why they say it's happening now, and the CIA and different authorities are releasing information slowly for us to digest it slowly so that we are not in a state of shock when full disclosure comes. I'm not saying I believe in full disclosure. I'm not saying something needs to be fully disclosed, but we are being spoon-fed a little bit of information slowly but surely, and maybe that's why now, after this was released in 2000, but now it's out there for the world to see on the CIA website.
But why is that, Make? Why do you think it is happening? Because me walking into work today and all of a sudden hearing this document is declassified, that's my first question.
There has been a lot of evidence that there are not only extraterrestrials, but possibly, this is according to officials who study this, I'm just now reading about it, there are possibly crypto-terrestrials that are relatives of ourselves that live underground, they live in the deep oceans, they live in the poles, and they live in places where they are remote and they are advanced civilizations. There's speculation that because they share the planet with us, they are concerned that we may blow ourselves up, and that's going to affect their civilization on Earth. Plus, there's the theory that there are extraterrestrials that are on our planet that are watching us and that they don't want us to destroy ourselves. These are all the theories that are out there, folks. We're going to be talking about this in the very near future here on We Are Not Alone. Not from me, but from the experts that have dedicated their lives to studying this and have even had close encounters of their own. So why now, Alicia? Because the fragile state of the world, these beings, whether they are our adversaries, extraterrestrials, crypto-terrestrials that live in hidden parts of the world that we don't even know about, are worried about the future of the planet, the health of the planet. They are watching us, and they are letting us know, they're letting us see them and their UFOs or UAPs, just enough to let us know they're there, but not to stop us, just to let us know they're watching. That's what the theory is. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great place for us to end because we have a lot more in store for you. We thank everybody for being able to watch. We Are Not Alone on Queen City News Plus. Make Beeler, any final thoughts before we leave? Because I have so many questions, but I don't want to give everything away. We're going to have the experts in-house to give us more of a preview. And May Beeler, I just think that this is very intriguing. It's very interesting, and it's fact.
And it's not to instill fear in anybody.
Yes.
It's just to educate. And by the way, if somebody shot a surface missile at you and tried to destroy you, what would you do?
Let's end it there.
According to the report, the KGB allegedly took custody of the petrified soldiers and the ruined spaceship, which were transported to a secret base near Moscow. The Soviet scientists claimed that whatever the light was, it somehow transformed the soldiers' living cells into a substance that was identical to that of limestone.
Maybe there was something that went off that was so intense in heat, it vaporized all the water in those soldiers, turning them to stone.
A nuclear explosion, if you're close enough, will flash incinerate you.
The CIA concluded that if the report were true, it presents a concerning prospect for humanity. If the KGB file corresponds to reality, it is an extremely menacing case. The aliens possess such weapons and technology that go beyond all our assumptions. They can stand up for themselves if attacked. The CIA document was declassified in the year 2000 and originally covered by Canadian weekly World News and the Ukrainian paper Holos Ukraini, but it has remained of interest to UFO aficionados.
What do you think about all this UFO disclosure? Paying attention to it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cool.
It's pretty interesting, right?
Yeah.
These guys shot at a UFO and it turned them into stone.
No matter what the surveys say or anything, everyone thinks there's like something going on.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human.
Stories of unidentified aerial phenomena and alien visitors have resurfaced in the public mind following the Department of Defense's establishment of the UAP task force in 2020.
Do you think extraterrestrial life is out there?
I think it's statistically unrealistic to think it isn't.
It saw the government's release of a plethora of new files on the mysterious flying objects recorded by the federal government with a goal to detect, analyze, and catalog the UAPs.
The universe brims with mysteries, and we so want many of those mysteries to be a light in the sky you don't understand. Gee, I want that to be aliens visiting us.
So this incident occurred during what should have been a regular, routine Soviet military exercise in Siberia. And here is a screenshot of the document that was released by the CIA. And according to the declassified document, the Soviet military personnel were shooting missiles for practice, and then they accidentally hit a UFO in the sky. But you might be asking, how did they get this report? What's going on? Who released this information, right? Because in the articles that you will see online, it's a very sloppy job. They give you this report and that's it, with no background information or what's going on or how it was released. That's where you and I are going to be filling in these gaps, all right? What's also mentioned in this report is that this information was released by the Canadian Weekly World News. And let me tell you, I went on a goose hunt to look for Canadian Weekly World News. I found nothing. No online footprint whatsoever. There is a World Weekly News, but that's run in the United States. There is a Canadian Global News, but there is no Canadian Weekly World News. Why is that? Well, to be fair, this original report was released a few decades ago, but for myself, I thought it was strange. How come Canadian Weekly World News doesn't have any form of footprint? And when you look it up online, like if you just type into AI, for instance, be like, okay, what's going on in this report? And it says, oh, don't trust Canadian Weekly World News. It's a publication that's known for sensationalism online and creating some fictional stories. I'm like, okay, well, give me the link to this bad boy. What is Canadian Weekly World News? And they will not give you a link. They will give you one, again, for Weekly World News that is in the US, a US one, but not a Canadian one. And I thought, well, isn't that strange? There's already this preconceived idea that it's a sensationalized news outlet, but there is no link to prove that. So I'm putting that out there as my little what happened during my investigation trying to find it. I was scratching my head. I was running through all these different links. I even went to the dark side of the web, and I don't like being there, but it happens from time to time. And I found nothing. So I thought we had to talk about that. Now, there is much more to this because former CIA operative Mike Baker has suggested the possibility of document alterations. And this is not for this report. It's just kind of like a general statement that he's made. A common concern with Cold War era files, particularly those related to military encounters with unexplained phenomena. Because as we know, during the Cold War era, it was just a really heated battle between the US and Russia. Who is going to get where first? Who's going to be stronger? Who's going to be better? And of course, files during that time, and even up to today, can be manipulated. And yet, there is so much going on in Russia that we simply cannot brush this case aside as a nothing burger of, oh, nothing to see here. Because if that was the case, I mean, why would the CIA even release this document to begin with? Now, here's the good stuff. Let me go back to this screenshot. So I had mentioned that this was released in the year 2000. Not entirely. While it does say it down here, it was down there that it was released in the year 2000. In reality, the public didn't receive it until 2011, and that was through a FOIA request. So it's another thing that isn't mentioned in any of the articles that you're going to read online because they just copy and paste. And I thought, I got to give you the goods. So when I first saw this, I thought, why is this 25-year declassified report making its rounds online? Everyone's freaking out. This is like the best thing in the world, which, hey, it is pretty cool. But why are we recycling and regurgitating this? To be fair, I missed this when it came out in 2011. And I also missed this when Joe Rogan had mentioned it on his Joe Rogan Experience podcast in 2023. But you might be thinking, Christina, what you're talking about isn't that big of a deal. Okay. But Russia has a lot of reported UFO sightings and encounters. And let's talk about a few of them. I know you've heard of the Petrozavodsk encounter with the jellyfish being seen. I know you've heard of the Voronezh, I don't think I even said that right, but you know what I mean, encounter with the children seeing strange aliens in the forest. But these next ones that we're going to mention, I don't think you've heard of all of them. So I'm going to share my screen here. First, looking at Ukraine. This one took place October 4th, 1982. And between 7:30 and 9:37 p.m., military personnel witnessed unidentified lights performing aerial movements near the missile base. How many times have we heard this? Too many times to count. But it's not just happening in the US, like Vandenberg and the Malmstrom Air Force Base. It's also happening in Ukraine. And so multiple witnesses observed this phenomena, and we have names for this, including Captain Valery Polykev. Gosh, I need to clean up all my Russian because it is not good. But it's okay, we're going to continue. Who described a brightly shining object resembling a New Year's tree garland. That's pretty descriptive. At 5 or 6 kilometers high, and even Lieutenant Colonel Balanev, who noted luminescence ranging from pale yellow to dark cherry colors as well. And then during this sighting, you had control panels at military unit 52035 who unexplainably showed missiles preparing to launch for approximately 15 seconds. That right there, in the year 1982, that could have been World War III. These missiles are going to be launched to who knows where. It would have been game over. That's it. But it seems like these craft in the sky, maybe the beings inside, are a bit of a jokester. They were laughing at this whole thing while everyone's squirming in those 15 seconds, trying to turn everything off, trying to not create another war. The craft up in the sky, they are laughing their heads off. And then, after those 15 seconds, the missiles never launched. Everything was back to normal. The alarms in the silo stopped beeping, and everyone thought that they died in that moment. And they kind of looked around, they pinched themselves, and they said, "Well, did we just survive this missile launch?" And the answer to that was an absolute yes. As soon as that happened, investigators and those in the area were trying to find any equipment defects. How did this happen? What's going on? How can we prevent this in the future? And they found nothing. They found no defects in the equipment at all. Here is an AI rendition of what the military officials might have seen that day. And then you had key witness, retired Colonel Boris Sokolov, who reported signal lights indicating launch preparation, while a Major Daviovich Kataman observed spontaneous illumination of all displays at around 8 or 9 o'clock. Then you had Lieutenant Colonel Vladimir Platonov, who provided one of the most explicit descriptions, calling the object just like a flying saucer that executed a beautiful silent turn. With this report, the beautiful thing about this is that we have names to back this story up, and we have their status. Colonels, majors, so on and so forth. That is great. You know where else have we seen that? We've seen that in Spain. Spain's pretty open about their UFO stuff. The military officials that see strange things, they come forward, they tell everyone who they are. And it looks like we're seeing that same pattern in Ukraine in 1982. And I got a little bit more for you. Because a 4-man commission led by Colonel Sokolov investigated the incident, but the declassified 9-page dossier reached no conclusion whatsoever. So the document became part of a larger collection of 386 UFO sightings that emerged after the fall of the USSR. And some researchers, including Robert Hastings, who was the one that really popularized this encounter, having suggested that UFOs may have been demonstrating control over nuclear weapons as a warning. As we've heard so many times, it's like watching kids play with fire. You can only let them go so far before they start hurting themselves and those around them. But that theory is just speculative. It's just an idea. Maybe that's the case. Or maybe they're just big old jokesters. And I thought it was so funny to see the people freak out for those 15 seconds. But the incident's proximity to the Cold War tensions and the lack of technical explanation continue to really fuel the debate about whether this represented, ET intervention, or if it was just merely an equipment malfunction. And that is the Height 611 UFO crash in 1986. And here is that mountain. Let me just zoom that in on for you. This one took place January 29th, 1986 at about 8 p.m. in the Dalny Gorsk, Russia. Thumbs up. That was a pretty good pronunciation. And over 20 witnesses observed a reddish 3-meter diameter sphere flying silently at about 700 or 800 meters in the sky before crashing into height 11, also known, and bear with me, as the Izvestkovaya Mountain. And the impact caused an electrical-like fire that burned for hours, leaving significant physical evidence. That's what I love. So investigations revealed a landing site affected by high temperature, covered with a black film, and containing numerous unusual materials. The physical evidence was extensive, and it included, listen to this, remnants of silica rocks with a distinctive smoky appearance were found alongside particles of silvery metal that appeared both sprayed, light, and in solidified balls across the site. And there were also these tiny net features about, featuring maybe 17 micrometer thin threads intervened with gold wires as well as iron balls. And then further examination uncovered mesh-like structures resembling glass carbon and ash, suggesting burn biological material, light gray pieces matching the tufts in the area, notably not found in local soil, and burnt fragments containing rare earth metals that showed evidence of exposure to temperatures exceeding 2000 degrees Celsius. And that's just to name a few. We don't get that kind of detail very often, do we? In this case, for height 611, we do. And here is an artist's rendition of what those witnesses saw that day. And then on November 28th, 1987, there were 32 flying objects that appeared with hundreds of witnesses. And this was investigated by multiple scientists from different institutes and universities. And they couldn't really give a sufficient answer. They said, it must have been a meteor, but that doesn't explain how bugs and animals wanted to avoid the area and people being sick for 3 years after the incident. Okay, that's strange. So that was just an idea, but there was no conclusion as to what happened that day up until those several years. I got one more case for you, and these all, interestingly, took place during the 1980s. This one took place in 1989, and this is referred to as the Kapustin Yar incident. And this is they say it's a secretive Russian military base, often compared to Area 51, and it's linked to multiple UFO incidents. And the most significant one took place in 1989. The facility allegedly studied wreckage from up to 8 UFO crashes between 1945 and 1991. Sounds very similar to the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, doesn't it? But the most detailed incident occurred on August 10th, 1989 at approximately 11 a.m., where Soviet military radar detected a disc-shaped UFO. And when they saw this, they labeled it as hostile. They were pretty upset about it. And so the big reason to why they labeled it that way is because they weren't able to communicate with the craft of who are you? Can you identify yourself? What are you doing here? And this craft in the sky wasn't responding. So in that moment, they said, okay, now this is a threat. Here's the interesting part. As the story goes, allegedly, the object was shot down by surface-to-air missiles and crashed outside next to the Caucasian Mountains. That sounds very similar to the CIA report that we refer to at the very beginning of the show, where these military officials shot down the object. we don't hear that detail too often. So many times for instance, when military jets try to chase these objects, they can't. They try shooting missiles at it and they malfunction last minute. But in these two Russian cases, they shoot, they aim, and they hit it, and then the craft crashes. That's a pretty unique detail. The wreckage was described as a 6.9 meters long and about 3 meters high, and it was shaped like a kind of like a conch shell with radiation detected at the crash site. Well, that detail we know a lot about. We always see and hear about radiation whenever UFOs land, crashed. Not always seen, but land and crash for sure. So then a retrieval team, like the crash retrieval program, and protective equipment, they found 3 alien bodies. They were pretty short, like 3 feet tall, with whitish gray outer covering and blue-green reptilian skin underneath. They had no hair whatsoever. They had these super large round eyes with these protective lids as well. And their hands only had 3 fingers, like a little T-Rex, kind of cute. And two out of the 3 beings died because they were killed by the falling equipment, while one wounded alien later died despite medical efforts. Sounds kind of like Roswell, just a little bit. And then the craft's interior allegedly contained control panels and equipment accessible through a opened door. Now, this story sounds crazy. I know it does. How often do we get these super cool details? Almost never. Here's an artist rendition of what might have taken place that day. But this is a case that has been passed along Russia for quite a few decades now. And it's one that people have tried to do investigations on and find paperwork on as well, find that paper trail. Some have been a hit, some have been a miss, but let's continue on with this one because the wreckage and bodies were transported first to the Mazdik Air Base and then to the Kapustin Yar study with the aliens preserved in glass containers and then the craft stored underground. Pretty cool stuff. And you know what? At the same time, it's not really that shocking. I feel like we've been doing that for some time. We could still be doing that today. It's just the human thing to do. Put things in glass jars, bury other things like dogs, and then come back to it when we're ready. We've been doing that for a very long time. But there was a separate incident on July 28th, 1989, involving this glowing green disc that looked like it wasn't emitting a lot of heat. And it was like half the size of a football field in diameter. And it had a semi-spherical dome hovering over that base that we had just talked about at around midnight. There were multiple witnesses, including communication with Officer V. Voloshin and Soldier G. Kulik. We only had their last names. We don't have their first names. And they observed it for approximately 2 hours before it departed after an airplane failed to approach it. Now, the KGB files allegedly contained handwritten reports from the 4 witnesses who were interrogated, but unfortunately, we do not have that paperwork. Russia has a lot going on. There's a lot happening in that country. And it seems like in the 80s, that was just kind of the peak of UFO sightings and encounters. But this report that was released in 2011, not the year 2000, about how the KGB had collected this information, the CIA got a hold of it, and then they released it through FOIA. It's making all of us scratch our heads. What really happened that day? What did those soldiers really witnessed. And the ones that survived, where are they now? What are they doing? Has their story changed? Or are they just trying to live their very normal lives, never again speaking about it?